everyone. Here is another series on the passionate professional. And boy, do I have somebody who honestly I'm really passionate about. His name is Nat Measley, and he is the founder of yourculturedesign.com. But wait till you hear his background. So let me tell you a little bit about my friend Nat. He, prior to yourculturedesign.com's founding and subsequent launch in July 2020, Nat has made the most of a truly unique professional career. In 2012, at the age of 28, Nat was hand selected to run his first small business. And by the end of 2016, under Nat's direction, the company had cut mostly monthly costs by over 60% using the self-developed methods by Nat and his team. At the same time, the company expanded from a handful of offerings to over 21 products, including licensing of a few of those products domestically and internationally in Australia. In those 4+ years, the company also saw its annual gross revenues increase by 100% from 2012 to the end of 2016 and is on pace to double the business each and of the coming 3 years without changing much of what was the basis of their expansive growth: small-minded entrepreneurial thinking. That he is. Nat is also an experienced and exceptional public speaker, facilitator, and trainer with a strong background in leadership in higher education, business, entertainment. He received his MPA from the University of Delaware with a focus on organizational leadership and has worked in academia and directly with CEOs and leaders and managers, HR professionals, and administrators to develop plans and paths for their organizations tied directly to specific business outcomes and goals. He is currently pursuing a doctorate degree focused on organizational learning. He is also a professor currently at University of Delaware in leadership and entrepreneurialism, if that's a word. And I want to introduce Nat.
Yes, thanks,
How are
Deb.
you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for that introduction. I
Oh,
forgot I did all of that.
do you sit
Forgot
here
I
and
did
go,
all of
is that
that.
me?
Yeah, I'm sitting there going like, oh, that's a lot. But I think that's it's kind of
Actually,
awkward. It's kind of awkward when someone's reading your whole bio and talking about all the things you've done. And I'm just sitting here going like, oh yeah, I should celebrate this. I guess I should be happy about this. We teach our students all the time, and I teach people all over the world that celebrating successes is an important part of building a good culture. And so I know Deb will celebrate me, but it's weird to celebrate ourselves sometimes.
you know what? I believe, and I have found this out, that actually writing or talking about your celebrations and your wins every day, it could be as simple as I went to the market, like whatever. It's so important because it lays that in your body. And I'm sure with what you do, which we want to hear more about, is so important. So I want to go back. You just heard what your life is about. It's kind of like,
Yeah,
here's
yeah.
your life. So for everybody that's listening and watching, I want you to go back in your life, Nat, and really tell us a little bit about what drove you to become who you've become. What was your passion? When did you realize you had a passion?
Yeah, I think my passion is continues to evolve, but I think it's rooted in being passionate about lots of things and trying lots of things. And um, I think that all starts with the environment in which I grew up. So I was literally born and raised on Chocolate Avenue in Hershey, Pennsylvania. That was my first address. That's where I lived when I was a kid. So it doesn't get much more romantic than Chocolate Avenue in Hershey, Pennsylvania. For the listeners outside of the United States, Hershey's chocolate might not be big where you are, but it's huge in the US. And so it was an idyllic childhood. It really was. And I was always surrounded by positive support and being able to try things in a safe environment. I can't tell you how many mistakes I made. But I was always consistently taught and shown that it's okay to do that as long as you're not hurting anyone else. You're taking a risk and learning, and that's a good thing. So that's, I think, why I ended up in the place that I'm in, which is, in short, teaching other people, right? Trying to get them to bring out their best selves, whether it's a leadership course at a university or a workshop on corporate culture and building daily habits for how we can make ourselves better. Um, it's about that, and it comes from that background. I think some of it does.
Absolutely. Wait, am I recording this?
Yeah, I think it still says recording on
Okay,
mine.
good. Okay. I love that. That's absolutely. Can you tell us the story? Because I think it is such a profound story. And as you know, probably a lot of kids didn't have the upbringing that you've had. I think that it's very rare. You really had like the Leave It to Beaver life. And so many of us didn't grow up like that. So can you tell us that story about your dad and the golf? Because I just love that.
Yeah. It's funny, just like you reading my bio. I think we kind of devalue our own stories or our own past, and I tell this story every now and then, and the more I tell it, Deb, the more people tell me it's profound.
It is profound.
So what it's done is it's forced me to think about this story. So here's the story. I'm 5 years old, and I'm living on Chocolate Avenue in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and uh, I'm taking risks, right? I'm absolutely crazy. And so for me, fun this day, and what I decide I'm going to do is go out in our backyard and create a miniature golf course. So I grab the small trowel from the garage and I start digging holes in the backyard. And so you can imagine a 5-year-old Nat out there, excitedly digging up holes to create this mini golf course. And all of a sudden, the back door swings open onto the back porch, and out steps my dad. And he looks and takes inventory of what's going on, and just, Nathaniel, he screams, Nathaniel, what are you doing? The hole over here isn't long enough, and we've got to cut the grass down shorter over here. And this hole should dogleg left, and we should put a windmill in the middle of this hole. Like, what are you doing? And the more I tell this story, the more I realize how odd that is. And I preface typically this story with the fact that my dad wasn't always like this. We got in trouble as well at times, but for whatever reason on this day, he dove right in. And his teaching and leadership style for me was, oh, you're not doing anything wrong here. You're just digging up my backyard. So let me help you to be even more creative. And so that moment, it was a series of moments like that, is really, I think, a contributing factor into how I've turned out. So in all of my courses and workshops, I'm teaching people, which is my passion, exactly that. Like, I'm cheering you on. If you come up with a dumb idea, this is how I'm going to look. And if you come up with a really great idea, this is how I'm going to look. Which is important when you're teaching things like creativity and design and entrepreneurship. This coming week, Deb, I have an online virtual workshop I'm leading with a huge pharmaceutical company. It's a new client of mine. They're all over the world. So the workshops, my time, are going to happen around 6 a.m. and they're all getting together. And we're going to do these workshops in creative design. And this is how I'm going to react to them when they come up with crazy ideas. Good job. I like it. Let's keep working on it. And their goal is to design things they can do in their everyday lives to enhance their culture. Which what does that mean? Well, it means they're going to bolster what they call their core strategies as a company as a whole, and also their daily lives to make them more effective potentially for the work that they're doing, or better connected to themselves as a team. And too often in the world, those conversations start and stop with, hey, here's an idea of what we could do, to make our workplace better. And it's cut off. No, we can't do that, or we can't pay for that, or we can't. So we're addressing all those questions, but at the root of it is like, yeah, let people create something for themselves, right? And let them design the way they want to work or where they want to work.
That is so amazing. What's coming up for me is that I think there'll be a lot of tears in that, because it'll be probably the first time for many of them where somebody did cheer them on, and it will be breaking down those limiting beliefs, right? That not good enough, or I can't really speak, or whatever, and allowing people to use their voice and to express themselves, probably in a way they've never have before at the helm of you, of the helm of you.
Yeah, and it might be hard, right?
Exactly.
Like it might be hard, which I know, um, because they've never had this opportunity, or they were digging up a golf course in the backyard and
And
got,
they got spanked and or
or
strapped
worse.
or
Like,
worse, exactly. And then,
yeah.
didn't
Mhm.
see the light of day for 2 weeks.
Right. And so, yeah. And so, it's it's interesting. It's when your initial question of how am I and why am I passionate about what I do, the more I try to explore my own past and story, the more I can understand, that it's unique to me, and I think that's a good thing. But I'm trying my best to help others.
I love that. So after you
Yeah.
were 5, we don't have to go year by year, but what so was that like a moment where you were, probably not consciously, but as you said, that was indelible and that has been your path. So where did you go from there? Like, what has been your journey?
Yeah. Well, I went away to school, I think is the next big part of my journey. And then continued to take risks. But I think over time I found my own agency in that process.
Oh,
Uh, so no longer was I relying on others to tell me I was doing a good job. I was just like, yep, I'm going to do it and take a risk. And I saw it benefit me more than not. I got slapped too a bunch of times.
how old were you at
Um,
this moment that
20, early 20s,
okay.
college age, early 20s, right out of school, making some really dumb decisions and making some really dumb mistakes. Like one of the key mistakes, I don't think I've told you this story, Deb, that I remember vividly was, after school, after college, I got a master's in public policy and organizational leadership. And instead of going into like academia or working for some public health data company or something, I got roped into starting a company with 3 other people called the Fun Department. And we created and produced these exceptional team building outings for other companies and corporate events, holiday parties, summer picnics. Um, and and we did it to great success. We won some really good clients. That was the company I was thrust in charge of when I was at a young age, for lots of other reasons. But one of the early like networking events we went to was this black tie gala. It's called the Best of Delaware Party, and it's a big deal. And our office rule and culture was you're allowed to wear a tie, but if you are, you're not allowed to wear pants. And because a tie restricts thinking, so we really don't want you to wear a tie, which is terrible. Like that's just wrong and simple minded. But 20-year-old Nat, he's all in.
Total.
So he shows up to the Best of Delaware party in a tie and a suit coat and these like obnoxious short Hawaiian shorts. And the security's like, no, you're not coming in. And I'm like, what? No, you don't get them. I'm fun. Like, I'm fun. I'm fun. And looking back on it, it's just, it's, it's embarrassing. I feel it's embarrassing. I get why people would feel it isn't embarrassing, but I feel just disgusting about it. And like, because I feel I've evolved and I feel I've changed by taking those risks and getting smacked for them.
Yeah.
But I will still take those risks. But I've learned to be calculated in where those risks happen, but I'm never afraid to take it.
Oh, I'm so glad. So he didn't let you in, obviously.
Nope. Maybe go back and put pants on to come back into the party.
Wow. That was nice that he let you come back in by putting
Yeah,
pants on. He could have
yeah.
said, no go, period. And actually he saved you from more
Well, I mean, honestly, yeah. Like, Deb, you've worked in branding your whole life, right? Like that's the brand you want to bring to a professional black tie event. Like, no, like,
but
come
you
on.
were
Like,
20.
I was 20 and there was no one else around me at that time helping me to say, like, this is one of those risks you should not take. Like,
Exactly.
you should calculate. That's funny that you can think about that and you can allow your mind to get there. But is it right? Is it helping the world? Is it helping you? No, it's not.
Oh,
It's
I like
embarrassing.
I like that.
I'm
So
laughing because I'm embarrassed.
yeah, but embarrassment is good too, because
Yeah.
embarrassment makes you go back in your mind and think about other things.
Mhm.
And what happened after that, after the fun company?
Yeah. Well,
Sounds
so
super fun,
we,
by the way.
yeah, so I was in charge of the company for 5 years till the end of 2017, and then I owned a little sliver of the company, so I sold that back to the original partners, and boomerang back to academia to go teach, and then continue to work on this problem of like people at work, like the research problem that we kind of explored at the fun department was people aren't having enough fun at work, which is true across the board, like duh. But again, how do you approach that and how do you solve that problem? So that research question for me has evolved into how do enlightened leaders design and develop workplace cultures that matter, or workplace cultures that care about their people. And now I'm fired up and I'm not embarrassed because um, that's what I care about. I hate that people show up to work and don't like their jobs. And I am that person sometimes too. Like sometimes before work or before a day, I'm going out to meetings or I'm going to class or have an event or a workshop that I'm leading. Like I'm nervous, I'm scared, I don't want to go. I think my mindset has changed even since COVID, about, being out more active. I mean, I was out all the time, meeting people, networking, mingling, pre-COVID. It's different now. My mind is different, I think. So um, now we work on that research question all the time though. So what are you doing to contribute to your people's work days to make them better? And more importantly, as a leader of a company, what are you spending money on to do that? And are you wasting money on it? Because there's a major deficit between what companies spend on, the Harvard Business Review calls it the employee experience, versus the rates of employees that are still disengaged in our world, which is like 70 to 80%, depending on what graph you look at. 70 to 80% of people out in the world don't like what they do.
Still, I would think that it had changed during COVID, where I speak to so many young adults and the Gen Zs who are really, putting their stake in and with non-negotiables. And so are you saying that it's across the board, or young people or older people, or
Yeah, that was a 2021 statistic from Gallup that 70+% of people are disengaged or actively disengaged in their work, which just means they don't care or they don't like their job.
do you
That's the
think it's because they
commonality.
haven't found their passion, Nat, and maybe are in the wrong position and now have they identified why they're not happy?
Yeah, I think maybe they haven't identified why they're not happy,
Yeah,
or they're surviving, right? And humans survive in the ways that they learn to survive,
that's right.
right? If we were out in the wild and we found a crop of berries that we can eat that won't kill us, we'll go back to that crop again and eat more berries.
Yeah.
so so we'll survive, and we learned how to do that, and humans are pretty adaptable and pretty resilient. So to hear that some of your younger connections and the people that you work with, Deborah, are putting their stake in the ground. Can I say the F word? Like
Yeah,
effing
go,
right,
please, of
effing
course.
right they
I
are.
love that word. That's my favorite word.
Yeah, freaking
It's
right they
just,
are.
oh,
Freaking right they should.
absolutely. Gen Zs are not taking shit like we did, like, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. So, I mean, with
Yeah.
that being said, when you talk about bringing fun, how do you how do you bring the fun? Like, tell me about your classes. So from there, you had the company, then you went to University of Delaware and started teaching.
Mhm,
Tell
mhm.
us a little bit about what your leadership courses, what you teach there, and now the entrepreneurial. Do you bring that fun into it, and what are you trying to teach the new leaders?
Yeah, I think so much of it, the leadership and entrepreneurship are two different subjects, but so much of the leadership classes that we teach are about you understanding yourself and your own leadership. So, how do you wake up in the morning? How do you set a vision for some common goal within yourself? Because if you can't do that, you can't do that for someone else.
100%.
And so similarly, with the entrepreneurship programs and classes, we talk about finding things you care about and problems you want to work on and solve. So as part of that process of understanding yourself, like find the problems in the world you want to solve. That's it. It's not about start a business and make money. It's about find problems in the world you want to solve. So that all relates directly to the work that I do now as a consultant outside the classroom, working with leaders to find themselves so that they can help their teams find themselves, and create a common vision and find problems that they can solve, and engage their teams in helping them to solve those problems, which can be a complicated task because of thousands of factors, but that's what we look at. We kind of keep score by dollars and cents. So if your company's spending $1 million on the employee experience, we want to know what kind of outcome it's having. Are your people happy? Are they healthy? Are they disengaged? Are you taking note of that? Are you doing an employee survey? Oh, you're only doing it once a year. That's a waste of freaking money. Like, hear me now, anyone listening to Deb's podcast. If you're about to work for a company or you work for a company and you're doing an employee survey once a year, that sucks. That sucks. Apple gets data on us every second of the day. And that's why that data is so powerful. So imagine if you were a leader of a company and you had employee engagement data every second of the day. Because what if someone's commute into work sucked? Or what if someone's, like, the meeting you just came through, like Deb yelled at me? Well, that affects you. It does.
And that could happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
that is so interesting.
yeah.
That is so true. Do you find the companies that you're working with are so backwards in that thinking that how is it that, and I also thought about, like, when you were running the Fun Factory kind of company, that was so early on when it was still like, I'm going to tell you what to do. You need to come in. And that seems, even though it was only 2012, 2016, that seems like the dark ages now, honestly, compared to where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
How are you bringing those two together? I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Your first question is thoughtful because, like, thinking about what companies are doing for people, on any given day, it can be really valuable and important. And when you asked about what that's one kind of factor or variable that I would say is in common with the companies we get to work with. So, like,
do the companies know that they're effed up? I mean, that they're stuck, that they're in the old way of thinking, and they can't even think about what could bring light or light people up? Is that why they come to you? Like, who are coming to you?
Yeah, I don't know. Most often the companies that are coming to us and to me are ones that have enlightened leadership, who have their own values defined. We work with a lot of startups as well who are kind of working on that process. Like, who are we as a group of people? And the most enlightened leaders are ones that understand that is going to be a conversation that evolves over time. Right? So my core values might be different in 2012 than they are today, and that's okay. It doesn't mean we're changing our ethics or morals or something. It just means we're changing, and as a system and a group of people, we might be different because we might lay off 10 people or we might hire 10 people. So more often than not, it's enlightened leadership who's calling us to add some kind of supplemental learning or workshop or event experience to what they're already doing for their people. But what we're going to do in that process is constantly ask you, why are you paying for this? Why are you paying for the hotel rooms for 1,000 people to bring them all together in the middle of the country, and dinners for 3 nights, and keynote speakers you're paying 20 grand for? Like, it better be worth it. And you better really focus on it to make sure that it's good. Because otherwise we're going to say, as like good consultants and auditors, we do culture audits. Like, we're going to say, this is a waste of money.
Wow. So are you part of that process, or do they say this is what we're doing and you're just monitoring it, or in it you're like, well, let's bring this person in because this person will bring value. Like, I'm very curious
Mhm.
about this, and I think other people would be too. In this kind of business that you do, you have a new client. Do they bring that idea? Are you bringing it? Or how is it work? Like, give us an example of, like you just said, in all the hotel room. Is that something that actually happened?
Over time that conversation evolves as well. So we want to get to know an organization and what they are doing, what their habits are, and what they're spending on for their culture, so we can understand how and where we can help them. I've been a part of $1 million events before at Universal Studios in Orlando, and it's not a waste of money. It's actually the best money the company's ever spent because
Why
of
not?
outcome,
Why?
because they're creating an experience for their people to
Total.
connect for years to come, or they're starting a conversation so that the next time we do a quarterly check-in, people have real true bonds and connections, and they remember that time. You can't just throw a trip to Universal at a group and expect it to work over time. You've got to work on it. Um, so it can go either way, Deb. But yeah, if you're just wasting money on things that aren't going to work, or you're hoping that it will work, like there's some secret sauce behind the scenes too into how to really connect people for sure. But
So let's talk about a little
yeah.
bit about that secret sauce, because that's
Mhm.
exactly, you said it so well. But I'm thinking there has to be some knowledge or what it is we're trying to get at. What is the most thing that people are looking for when they're trying to get their people lit up, passionate about what they're doing,
Mhm.
feeling good, having the employees feeling great about what they're doing, contributing to the world? What do you feel now? Because things have changed post COVID and
Mhm.
everything. What are you seeing now? What are the like five most important things in working with companies that you know they need or anybody needs to succeed?
Yeah, motivation, recognition,
Mm,
um,
yeah.
a connectedness, a bonding, and then autonomy and importance in the job they do. Like that's at least five, right? So I'll give you a couple of really great examples.
Yeah.
There was a woman who I got to interview for one of our classes and workshops, who's a chief of staff for Slack,
Oh, sure.
oversees hundreds of employees all over the world, big time technology company, very successful. And through all of the pandemic, their answer to that bonding and importance and connectedness piece was 5-minute Zoom check-in one-on-ones with every single one of her direct reports, which was like hundreds of people. So wherein the typical leader, I think, would think, well, we got to get everyone on Zoom and we're going to do an hour call and everyone say your favorite animal. No, like, no, spend 5 minutes with Deb and go, Deb, what's going on? How can I help? You know, I'm here to help. That's my job. We got 5 minutes. I'll stay here for 10, but like one-on-one check-ins that really worked. So understanding what it also creates a forum to understand what their motivations are. It creates a forum for you to be able to recognize people. There's a speaker we've worked with in the past at events named Chester Elton. He's amazing. He is a world-renowned expert on culture and recognition. He just wrote a new book called Anxiety at Work. We've seen him speak at multiple events. He's a New York Times best-selling author. And almost all of his work comes back to recognizing people for the good that they do. It's just saying thank you. So you
It
could
gives
do
me
that by saying
chills, to be
thank
honest with
you.
you. I could see how powerful that would be.
Mhm. Yeah, you could do that by saying thank you if you really mean it. Or part of that recognition could be, hey, come to the retreat. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Um, thank you for being you. Thank you for doing well for the business. Like there's lots of different ways to position that, but yeah, so there's all these interesting like examples, but it almost always comes back to the human and emotional response from all the research I've seen and different connections like Chester and others out there, that seems to be the right answer. So good news for startups that aren't well funded. you can do this stuff for free, but you have to mean it. um, good news for the big companies, you can still pay $1 million and do it well, but you still have to mean it.
Yeah, right. Money's not the key here. You know what comes up for me, Nat? Maybe you
Yeah.
could touch on this. But in cultures, are your people finding Gen Z people different than millennials? Millennials and then the Gen X's. The mindsets seem to be so different. Is there approaches now to those different mindsets?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I think an enlightened leader still answers the call for what their people need. So whether your leader is 89 years old or 39 years old, like I am, I'm a solid millennial born in 1983, or 23 years old, like true Gen Z, right?
Yeah,
Born in the early 2000s,
yeah,
maybe 1999. But uh, I think it always comes back to that. And there's always been generational gaps, right? There's always been that gap between the old way of work and the new way of work. I think it's prominent now. And I
very,
think more of the younger employees have more of a say,
yeah.
because I always use the example of the young employee who could do 10 times the amount of things in 1/10 of the time. Great, then engage them, keep them happy, let them be productive, recognize and motivate them. Don't complain or worry about whether or not they're in an office or not. Like, they want both, by the way, from what I've seen and who I've talked to, specifically young college students and Gen Z. They want both the autonomy to work from home and the social connections.
Sure.
So if you can give them both, more power to you. If you can't, just start with the autonomy and try to start there and see if it works. But they also need to be well trained. They need to be shown the light. They need to be shown why your company cares about them and the world. Um, so I think it's always existed there, but I think it's more prominent. We see it more often. And I do think the younger generations can have a more powerful voice.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much more resilient than they've gone through so much that they're not going to walk into a culture and accept anymore, I think.
Yeah, that might be part of it. They've right. Like, if somebody was, I forget where I saw this, an article recently that was sharing, the experiences of Gen Z, right? And if you think about, if you're born in 1999, you're that 23-year-old leader. 2 years later, 9/11. 5 years after that,
Yeah.
major market crash that affected everyone. Couple years after that, COVID.
And in between, like 2000 school shootings.
For sure, an exponential increase in all of that. And so you're resilient, you 23-year-old, so what's good and isn't good, versus the millennial who's been spoon-fed creativity and chocolate his whole life.
Yeah.
And now, mind you, I've been through my own stuff and I've overcome, but like, yeah, you could make an argument that Gen Z is resilient for sure.
Absolutely. That's so interesting, Nat. And lastly, what like profound, you've given so many great nuggets. What would be your profound statement or messaging that you can give to my viewers of what it takes to be a passionate professional? What it takes today in your mind?
Phew, that's a good question. um, I think it takes care.
Mm.
I think it takes care.
And what do you mean by care?
Um, I think it takes self-care. That's different from how I grew up, honestly. That's
Yes.
different from generations past, but I think it's needed now more than ever. There's this impending wave of services we'll need for mental health for everyone in the world. And so self-care is going to be incredibly important. So what I hear often from companies and clients we're working with, we
Mm.
want to remind our people to care for themselves. Self-care is going to be so, because we can't do it, right? Because they're waking up in their bedroom, they're walking across the hallway to open up their computer to work all day. They're getting their own coffee. Like they have to care for themselves. We can't do it anymore as a manager walking around the hallways. So self-care, care for others, and then care for communities. So if you can take care of yourself, you can hopefully care for one other person and then maybe more. And I think that could be a good secret to spread, especially in today's world. It's so divisive and nasty and gross. And like, it's not nasty and gross like we're critiquing each other. That's different. It's nasty and gross like, you're wrong, Devin, I'll never see your view. Like, that's not what we're talking about. That's not walk a mile in someone else's shoes. That's just your shoes stink. And so that's not caring for others. You can disagree with someone and care for them deeply. So I think we need that. And I think then we need, I don't know, to reconnect as communities through that same philosophy.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And I need to do it too. Like I don't.
Well,
I do it sort of, but I need to do it,
I
I need to do
totally
more.
get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. It is, we were never taught that. It was all, what are you doing outside of yourself? We've been, all of us, no matter what age we are, we've been conditioned. And I also see this with some of the Gen Zs too, whose parents are just it, because they never got the self-care. So they put all of it on the kid, it's for the others. It's outside of yourself. But that's not the new world. The world needs people that care about themselves first and can come from, exactly you said, that place. And it was interesting what you were saying about the work that you've done. The old days, the old saying, you can't make somebody else happy. So even in the workplace, if you're expecting the place where you're working to make you happy, or that's going to be, your dream source is now, it's every day. It's not in the future. And if you think going out to getting a job, for anybody listening to this, that's when you're going to be happy, you're sorely mistaken. Because then you're going to have Nat come in and try to make it the funnest thing you can, and you got to bring that value kind of with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, no, I love what you said. Oh, you're the best. Thank you so much for sharing yourself with us. How could people reach out to you, Nat? Because I'm sure they're going to be blown away by what you said, or companies who may be listening to this, because I have had a lot of companies on. How would they reach you so they can bring fun into their worlds?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Deb, and thank you for your time and for our connection. Deb and I have become really good friends, and I'm floored by her story too, and the work that she keeps doing for not just young people, but companies all over. So it's really easy. yourculturedesign.com is the main hub for all the work we're doing. And if you ever want to connect with me personally, I think I'm the only Nat Measley on LinkedIn. That's where I live. I live on LinkedIn. I post often about updated research and culture from some of the experts I mentioned, among others. And the thing that I love to do, which I offer all my students in all my workshops, whether it be at a university or at a corporate workshop setting, if you connect to me on LinkedIn and you see someone you want to meet, I will make the connection for you. That's the point of LinkedIn. So I have
everybody hear that?
I have an interesting and unique group of people on there and connections. So connect with me on LinkedIn, sift through my network, and tell me who you want to meet.
Oh my God, I love that. But before you do that, know who you are. Just want to let you know.
That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Deb.